The Boy from Yesterday, Chapter 8, A Day in the Life of Miss Humphrey. Later that afternoon, Laurel managed to forget about the test in Professor Kapoor's class as soon as it was over. She stopped by the campus library to start planning a paper she had to write on the First Ladies for her American history class. She wasn't sure where to start, which meant a necessary but always challenging conversation with Agnes Murphy, the librarian.
Well, good afternoon, Miss Annette, said Agnes, looking up from her desk and peering over her half-rimmed glasses.
It's actually, Laurel started when Agnes waved her off.
Of course, Miss Laura,
Agnes said. Laurel said, It's Laurel, smiling awkwardly.
Laurel, I keep getting it all mixed up,
Agnes smirked. Agnes had a habit of calling Laurel by the wrong name, which Laurel swore she did on purpose, just because Laurel's grandmother, Marguerite, never did seem to get along with Agnes, or vice versa.
I keep mixing you up with your mom, Annette, and I should remember Humphrey, because that little Robert Humphrey sure was a looker. How are you holding up, darling?
Agnes was referring to the death of her mother, trying to sound concerned, but it came off to Laurel as just patronizing. Fine, thanks. Thank you, Mrs. Murphy, Laurel replied, trying to be gracious but clearly annoyed. I'm looking for the women's studies section and some information on the First Ladies.
Well, Agnes brightened and sat up in her chair, adjusting her glasses. You've come to the right place. You'll find a lot of it just over there against the wall. My favorite of those is Mrs. Wilson. She did some nice things for the White House, as did Mrs. Taft. Mrs. Roosevelt was too busy with other things. Heaven knows how she kept the place.
Agnes liked to show off her knowledge, and even if Laurel didn't know for sure, she always suspected Agnes knew less than she tried to show.
And the information on Mary Todd Lincoln is just fascinating. Third shelf down, Agnes pointed as she nodded and readjusted her glasses yet again.
Thanks, Mrs. Murphy, Laurel said as she smiled and headed that direction, anxious to be away from Agnes. She perused the shelves and was leafing through one of the books when she felt two hands goose the small of her back in a quick grab. She turned around to see Christian, his bright brown eyes and white teeth smiling directly at her. Hey, beautiful, he said as Laurel turned around. He kissed her immediately without Laurel having a chance to say hello. He wrapped his arms around her and lifted the book from her hands and set it down on another shelf in the wrong place. He pressed and kissed her harder, which at first annoyed Laurel, but the smell of Christian's cologne on his neck, spicy and no doubt some expensive brand, and the softness of the hair on the back of his head as she touched it, made her pull his face closer to hers. Being lost a second in his kiss until she really had to breathe and pulled away gently, shaking her head awake. "Whew," she said. "That sure beats reading about Mrs. Taft." "Who?" Christian said. "Never mind. You're going to Chesterfield Day, right?" Laurel asked as she looked up into Christian's eyes, which looked like those of a playful puppy. "With the most beautiful girl in town, I am," he said, giving her his best grin. "Tell her I said hi," Laurel said, and turned to grab the book off the shelf. Christian laughed. "Yeah, you tell her. She's your twin sister, and I'm picking her up at 7. "Oh, I actually promised Em I would walk with her. Maybe meet you there?" Laurel said. "Oh, yeah, sure, that's fine," Christian said, just as his phone in his pocket was ringing with a "Dude looks like a lady" ringtone. He took it out and answered it. "Yo!" Yeah, I'm on my way." Without saying who it was, Christian kissed Laurel a peck on her lips and whispered, "See you then," and winked, dashing out the library lobby. Laurel put the book back on the shelf, wondering who he might have been talking to, and figured out that if it was the "Dude looks like a lady" ringtone, it was probably TJ, and Christian had programmed his phone with that ringtone for TJ. She shook her head in a mock annoyance at the thought, and after stopping at the front desk to check out her books, headed out herself to get home for dinner with Marguerite. When she got home, the house smelled of all the good things Marguerite used to cook when Laura was little. The scent brought back memories of childhood and her mother. Laurel headed into the kitchen where the smell was stronger and a kitchen timer ticked away on the granite countertop. Marguerite was sitting at her computer at the little table in the corner of the large kitchen with her glasses on, reading the computer screen intently. Marguerite murmured as she read. She then became conscious of Laura walking in and turned around. "Well, how was your day, dear?" Marguerite beamed as she took off her glasses and stood up heading over to the oven to baste what Laurel now realized was Marguerite's wonderful pot roast. "Did you survive?" Laurel thought for a moment about what she was referring to: the test with Kapoor, dealing with Agnes Murphy, her brief encounter with Christian, or something else. She realized it was the test. "Yeah, great." "Well, I'm not surprised. When your mom was doing research with your dad, they had so much work to do and yet made the best grades. You're just the chip off the old blocks, I'd say." She finished basting and then went back to the little desk. "I was just Googling new gravy recipes. I think there's one I'd like to try if I just have my liquid smoke on hand," she said, putting her glasses back on and reading the computer screen. Sam, Marguerite's black and tan dog, trotted into the kitchen and immediately started pawing at something under the bar stool at the far end of the counter, across from the oven, and snorting. Marguerite turned from the computer screen and looked down. "Sam, what is that?" She got up and bent over to see what Sam was pawing at. Relieved, she went back to the computer. "Oh, you." She turned back to Laurel. "I dropped a piece of sliced onion on the floor. I can't believe he likes that. This one likes anything. He's like a vacuum cleaner. I should have named him Hoover, but then people might have think he's named after Herbert Hoover, which would just be..." She rolled her eyes and made a face, sticking her tongue out. "Actually, I should have named him Agnes, but she's a bitch, and Sam's a boy dog. That would never work," she snorted, and got up and started looking in the cabinet for wherever she might find her liquid smoke. "Should be ready in a few." Laurel petted Sam briefly and went upstairs to her room, tossing her purse on the bed and backpack on her desk. She could still smell the pot roast and realized she was getting hungry. She knew she had studying to do, but took a moment to look out her window at the street below and across the street to see that the stores had just installed a satellite TV dish on the roof. A car drove by with its windows down, and "Dude Looks Like a Lady" was blaring on its radio, making her think of Christian and getting lost in thought about her relationship with him, and then what to wear for Chesterfield Day. She recalled last year's Chesterfield Day, a day when the town celebrates its heritage with a festival in the Grand Park, with games, food, a baking contest, dancing, and lots of flirting among the younger residents, all in the best approximations of 19th century period costumes they could muster in a town with no formal costume shop. Chesterfield didn't have much in the way of excitement except for the usual high school football and baseball games, or perhaps a no-frills touring company of a now-dated Broadway show at the Performing Arts Center about 10 miles away. So the locals made their own fun, with several local festivals throughout the year, just for something to do, which gave a sense of local community that Laurel, as Laurel knew from traveling with her parents when she was young, big cities just don't seem to have. She arranged her books from the backpack onto her desk and opened her closets to start looking for the items that she had ordered off of eBay that she was going to use for her costume. But she was too distracted by the wonderful scent of the pot roast to concentrate, and went back downstairs to help Marguerite hasten dinner.